We are streaming where we need to be streaming. And alrighty, are we there? We are streaming where we need to be streaming. We are streaming where we need to be streaming. Welcome, everybody. We're so excited to see you all here. I know it is for many of you, you're done with school already. And so I'm excited that you joined us. I mean, even though you're out of school. And for those of you who are in your last week or last weeks, stay strong. You're almost done. And we're looking forward to summer, I'm sure. I am really, really pleased today to have some of my favorite people in the industry join me for our last Tuesday talk of the summer before we take a little summer break. And we're just going to talk. We're just going to have a nice kind of end of the cycle conversation. And they have graciously agreed to just be on and be here to answer questions. So given that it is a question Q&A kind of session, we would love for people to start even now putting in the Q&A questions that you might have so that we can try to get to as many as possible. And we know that a lot of you have similar questions, so we can kind of put them together and cover as much as we can. So don't hesitate to start typing. We prefer for you to use the Q&A. That's just easier for us to track, but you are welcome to say hi if you'd like on any of the chats as well. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to actually do what I always do, which is ask each of my guests to introduce themselves and to, tell your name and how long you've been doing what you're doing and one fun fact, as we always do. So Todd, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, hello everyone. Good morning, my time. Good night, your time. My name is Todd Denning. I'm an associate director of admissions at Dartmouth College. I've been here for a couple years now, and a fun fact about me is that I am a certificated private pilot, and I fly my own plane for fun. So that's what I like to do when I'm not doing this. I like to be in the air.
That's awesome. See, I love doing the fun facts because literally every time I'm like, wait, I didn't know that. Why did I not know that? Awesome. Okay, Suji, you want to go?
Or I was hoping you wouldn't call me because my fun fact is nearly not as fun as that. But hello, everyone. My name is Suji, and I'm here representing Georgetown University. I've been in admissions for about 7 years now, and my fun fact is that I will be traveling to South America for the first time next. I'm very excited about.
Awesome. Enjoy. Okay, Saul, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Gloria. Hi, everyone. My name is Solomon Enos. I'm Senior Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions here at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. I've been at Duke since 2012, so just finished my 12th year. Unbelievable. Fun fact, I'm actually usually on many weekends at Shane's campus at Vanderbilt University. I'm in my EDD program. I have 1 year left, so I'm super excited to almost be finished. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. All right, Christy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christy Callahan. I'm an Associate Director of Admission at Northwestern University. I'm also the Director of Global Partnerships and Outreach, which means I get to work with our international financial aid candidates and a lot of organizations that lift students up to send them their best and brightest to us here in the US. So I feel privileged for that. My fun fact, I did my first CrossFit competition this weekend, and it made me just as sore as running a marathon, which was news to me. And again, by competition, it was like prom at my gym. So it wasn't like very serious. But I also have a little 6-year-old running around in the back. If you hear her, she's part of the fam. And Gloria's been part of the fam because she knew me when I was pregnant in China.
Yay. We're happy to see Corinne if she shows up. All right, Shane.
Tough facts to follow. But my name is Shane McGuire, Senior Associate Director at Vanderbilt University. Been at Vanderbilt for just over 10 years as of like a week ago. So, and my fun fact is I'm the proud father of an 11-year-old puppy. She just had her birthday like a few days ago. I can't believe she's 11. Fortunately, she still has plenty of puppy energy. But there's my fun fact for the day.
Very fun. What's your puppy's name?
Funny enough, her name is Cameron, so she's named after the stadium at Saul's campus. It's a long story as to how that happened, but I call her Cammy for short. So,
Aren't these fun facts fun? I mean, I love them, and I mean, we do them because we want you all, audience, to feel like we're real people, and real people are reading your applications, and real people want to answer your questions, and real people are involved in admissions. And when you're applying, you're a real person. You're not just pieces of paper and numbers and scores. You're actually authentic human beings. And that's why we love Tuesday Talks so much, because we want to have those kinds of conversations. My name is Gloria, in case, I guess I didn't say that in the beginning. My name is Gloria. I'm one of the co-founders at Initial View, host of Tuesday Talks. As many of you have heard, you probably know way too much about me because I have to share a fun fact every time. Today's fun fact is I'm actually in New York City. My daughter, she's my youngest. She's an aspiring ballerina, and she is in New York at a summer intensive. So I get to be here, and she's going to be on her own. I'm going to leave her in a couple of days for 5 weeks as a 14-year-old. So any parents on the call, I am with you. I understand how nerve-wracking it can be to have your child go to the next phase of life. And so thanks for being here as well. And so as you all are here, I would love to know if I can get this to work. I would love to know who is here today. So you will see a poll come up in a minute. And let's see if it comes up. Yeah, there's a poll up here. I'd love to know if you are a student, a parent, a counselor, and what time of the cycle you're in. And as the numbers come through, it looks like we have mostly students, which is great. I love it that students are here, and most class of 2025, meaning you are in the summer of your junior year and getting ready to apply. So really, really, that's the audience, friends. Lots of students. And so far, 75% class of 2025. So we've got a lot of people that are right there. We have a couple freshmen here on the call, so that's really fun as well. They are looking ahead, rising freshmen, looking ahead on what they can do to prepare for the college application process. So thank you so much for being here. Few parents and counselors are here as well. Thanks for joining us. And we are going to start talking about the institutions that are here. There are already questions about what makes your school, like what's unique about your school. So I'm going to go ahead and share our slide here. And we're going to go ahead and start with Dartmouth. If you want to tell us your unique aspect.
All right. Yeah. So I guess if I have to choose one, I'm going to talk about a couple. Dartmouth is, as some folks probably know, we're the smallest member of the Ivy League. We are the northernmost Ivy campus, and I think certainly the most rural. We are the only school within our peer group that still calls itself a college to this day. So we're Dartmouth College, not Dartmouth University. And when we say that, what we're trying to do is signal the fact that Dartmouth is a place that focuses on undergraduate education. So in addition to that, we have the largest and the oldest outing club in the country. So for anyone who is interested in the outdoors, Dartmouth is a fantastic place to study. We own our own mountain. It's called Mount Moosilauke. We're nestled between the Green Mountains of Vermont and the White Mountains of New Hampshire. It's just a really picturesque and beautiful place to study. So if anyone gets the opportunity to visit colleges in the US, I would say certainly come give us a visit sometime soon.
Yeah, and this is a picture of Duke Chapel. So welcome to Duke. There are a few things that, I think when I think of Duke, I think of a few things. So the fact that we are a very collaborative place. So the academic walls at Duke are left thin on purpose, allowing for lots of collaboration both across and within schools. I think of us as being very forward thinking. And so we are just celebrating our 100th anniversary this year. So relatively young university relative to our peers. And so because of that, you know, we're tied to some traditions, but we're also a school that's constantly looking forward, that's unafraid of change, that's unafraid of looking inward and asking, you know, how can we be a stronger institution? How can we use the creation of knowledge at Duke to better society as a whole? And then, you know, I would describe our students as being ambitious, and our dean actually says that they're outrageously ambitious. And so we have a lot of resources here to allow students to take that ambition and create things. And we say that, you know, students are ambitious and they take advantage of opportunities, but Duke is a place where they can make opportunities for themselves as well. So yeah, I'm happy to be here again. Thanks.
I will touch on a couple things about Georgetown. This is probably the most photographed building that you have seen. If you've seen any photograph of Georgetown, it's Healy Hall. So Georgetown University is located in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. The location is really one of the things that make us stand out. I would say being in the national and international hub of America really lends itself to a lot of benefits for our students. But the campus itself, as you can tell, is compact, residential. You are part of a community of other Georgetown students, but you also have the benefit right in your backyard. The second thing that I would highlight about Georgetown is our founding. We were founded on the roots and principles of wanting to educate students from all different religious backgrounds. And you see this really played out to this day, where we continue to cherish diversity forms. We have 5 undergraduate schools, and the most important thing to know about Georgetown in the application process is that you won't find us on the common application or coalition application. We have our own unique application. So if you have any other questions, feel free to refer to our website or ask Q&A as well.
Okay, guys, welcome to Northwestern University's campus. This is all of our green space that we like to call the Lake Phil. It's where students hang out and throw a big party in the fall or in May called May Fest and Dillo Day. But one of the first things I want you to know about Northwestern is that we have what we call the trifecta of college locations. So right outside a major international city of Chicago, nestled in the suburb of Evanston, which is the first town over the border. It's a green, walkable campus. You know when you're on campus and when you're off. And there's 3 different modes of transportation to get back and forth from the city of Chicago, where we have other graduate programs and other assets for you to dig into, as well as the second most concentration of Fortune 500 companies in the United States. So there's a lot of ways that we use Chicago as a baseline, but we have that own hometown campus feel in Evanston. Evanston is a quintessential college town. So it has everything you need to be a student and a lot of the perks too. But one of the things academically that I need you to know is we have 6 different colleges and schools, and those 6 different colleges and schools allow students to really navigate the entirety of Northwestern. So whether it's our 13 disciplines of engineering, the Weinberg College of Arts and Science, which is our largest, featuring economics, our largest major, or even one of our tiniest majors, creative writing, who has rock stars like Veronica Roth, who wrote the book Divergent, and others. In her senior year at Northwestern. The Medill School of Journalism, which is a one-of-a-kind and the undergraduate level in the United States. School of Communication, featuring anything from theater to radio, television, and film, and human communication sciences and disorders, all the way over to the Beanan School of Music as well. So the Beanan School of Music allows a conservatory style of program without being conservatory in the traditional sense. So beyond that, I just want you to know that there's a lot of creativity happening at Northwestern, a lot of community, innovation, a whole ecosystem of entrepreneurship. So our students really engage across a variety of curriculums to kind of seek out whatever their path is. And so we like to say, and is in our DNA at Northwestern. That's a little bit about Northwestern, and I'll pass it off.
All right, I get to round us out here. So my fun fact or most unique thing that you can remember about Vanderbilt is that we have a 3-to-1 squirrel to student ratio. And that is really a fun way of us sort of talking about our location, which you can tell is very important to all of us here. But we have this beautiful park-like campus. It's actually a national arboretum, but you're tucked right in the heart of Nashville. You're a mile and a half or 3 kilometers from the center of downtown. And it's a fun, vibrant, growing city. It's often referred to as Music City, USA. So live music all around the city, but we also bring that to our campus. We host a couple big concert series every year, some of the biggest events that you'll find on campus. And even though we're right in the heart of the city, it's a highly residential place, students living on campus all 4 years. We very much embrace the living learning model where faculty are living alongside students in the residence hall. So you have that amazing ability to get to know them beyond just that traditional classroom setting. A collection of 4 undergraduate schools. We have the liberal arts college at the core of everything we do, and then specialized schools in engineering, education, and music. And while you're picking one as the home base, you'll find you have a lot of flexibility. Students do things across schools, within schools. So you don't have to have it all figured out when you show up. And that's a quick overview.
Awesome. Well, great. Thank you so much for sharing some fun facts about your universities. And we're going to just dive in. There's a lot of great questions here. And I wanted to start because we've had a Tuesday talk fairly recently about holistic review. And so we're going to start a little bit about kind of what that looks like with some of these questions. And in one of our sessions, we talked about academics being kind of a really important part of that holistic review. Like, can you handle the work? Are you going to be, thriving and competitive and able to kind of participate and engage academically on your campuses? So there's some questions about what that might look like. And so my first kind of question is with regards to rigor. I think there have been some kind of uncertainties about, do you know what my high school is like? Like how do I show you that I have rigor? Is taking, if I have a special interest in one subject and I took an AP and an IB, is that good, or is that watering it down? Like, does that look like I just picked easy subjects? There's like a lot of questions like that. So I know that's kind of a big topic, but maybe if people can kind of like weigh in on what does rigor mean? How do you all kind of measure rigor? And like, let's talk a little bit about how you guys understand high school context. Anybody want to take a first stab at that very convoluted question?
I'm happy to dig in. So one of the things that I think is helpful to understand about the work that we do as admissions officers is that we understand that the context from which you're coming from is incredibly important, because a school that is across the street from another school offers an entirely different curriculum. The standards there are different. And so as admissions officers, when we read a file, we are tasked with not just reading what is submitted from the student, but understanding the opportunities that students have available to them. And so rigor is generally important because we want to ensure that any student who comes to our campuses are going to be academically prepared, that they can do well, that they will thrive, that our professors will love them, and that they'll be engaged in the classroom. And so there's sort of no hard and fast rules about this. There's no sort of scale that we use to measure whether, a certain number of APs is better than another set of APs. And I always say, if your school, for example, offers an AP curriculum, you do not have to take every single AP course at that school in order to sort of hit a standard of most demanding, right? So have a conversation with your guidance counselor, with other constituents who might be involved. Say, am I challenging myself generally, and am I preparing myself for the rigors of a rigorous place? And if the answer is yes, then that's great. And then regarding doubling up on courses that might be similar, my response is that if you enjoy those things, then there's nothing wrong with that, right? If you're taking multivariable calculus and BC calculus at the same time, that's completely fine. There should be a level of breadth across the curriculum, because that's important too, especially when you're applying to colleges in the US that are not just focused on one particular area, but might be a liberal arts institution, for example. So there should be some variety there, right? That's important too. But to the extent that you shouldn't be taking classes that are similar, I would say that that's not true. Just take what you enjoy doing.
Anyone have anything to add?
That was a fantastic answer. I'll just add a quick note about we also don't have a preference as to which curriculum that you take, right? Every school is different in what they offer, but we don't have a preference of AP over IB or national curriculum over Cambridge or anything like that. There are tons of curriculums across the world that can prepare you for a university. So really, we just want to understand with what's available to you, you have made the most of that opportunity and are performing well, but just know that we don't have some sort of scale that we're using or expecting one to be better than the other, as they can all be really great preparation for university.
And with
Just
that,
go
oh,
ahead.
Chrissy, go ahead.
I was just going to say one moment of real talk, because that's what we like on this Tuesday Talks, is everything that they said, but just calibrating it with the fact that you're going to find a lot of opinions and sources and people that act like they know what the perfect combination of rigor is. And that's not true, because every student has to establish rigor for themselves. We have 50,000 applications at Northwestern. There's no way you can create a magic grouping of courses across the board. Again, what Shane said, all the different contexts and curriculums. So don't pay attention to too many of the voices out there. Pay attention to your voice inside, understanding where you can push yourself, where you can inspire yourself. And that is truly rigor in the holistic process. So don't get too distracted.
And I just want to add one very quick thing on top of colleagues have already mentioned, is that the admissions committee, if you, for example, are in a national curriculum, the admissions committee doesn't expect you to take the tests, to take the exams that you have not been prepared for. So that doesn't mean that just because you're in a national curriculum, the admissions is expecting to see AP exams, for example. If you're in a national curriculum, the admissions committees are very knowledgeable about your respective national curriculums, and they understand that sometimes it can be very limiting, and sometimes you might not have available to you those opportunities to take AP courses, to take IB or dual enrollment courses. So truly know that the admissions committee really knows the context of your high schools very well, and to have that conversation with your guidance counselor, with your college counselor, whoever serves as your advisor, would really know what is available to you.
And I'll just round everything out. All of my colleagues said wonderful things. I think at this level, in terms of our universities, in terms of being pretty hyper selective, there's a difference between competitive versus compelling. And I think the first hurdle that, when we look at applicants is, is the student competitive for admission? And this is where the rigor comes in. This is where we look at the academic grades and maybe testing if testing is submitted. But to be honest, again, real talk, for most students who apply to these universities, the academic level, the profile is very high already. And so most students get past that first, this student is competitive, yes. And so then we go on to, the idea of like what makes the student then very compelling in our process, and maybe more questions after that we'll kind of dive into the compelling part. But I'll turn it over to Gloria.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the highly selectiveness of your institutions, there is a question, like, what's your admit rate? Like, how many kids are you actually taking each cycle? And particularly because Tuesday Talks tends to be an international group, specifically international, is that even harder for an international student to get into an institution like yours? So just kind of, and I am curious, as the host and kind of your friend and just being in the industry for a while, like what trends you're seeing kind of on that level of like, are the right kind of applicants applying to our institutions? Are the, what kind of quality of applicants are coming through? What are some of the mistakes that you see coming through as you're reading, realizing like you probably shouldn't have applied to our institution in the first place, or, anything that you can weigh in on that? So anything you're able to share in terms of the actual admit rate, or, and any kind of interesting trends you may have seen since COVID and in this particular year. Anyone want to take a stab at
silence? Right. So we don't sort of report on disaggregated data about our admit rate. It is less than 5%, so it is selective. But the sort of larger trend that I'll note is that I think all of our institutions continue to be more and more popular, and that is true of Dartmouth as well. And in the international sense, our fingerprint globally continues to grow, right? Like China's always been a big country for, I think, every school. That is true of Dartmouth. But we have students applying from all pockets of the world that we've just never seen apply before. And I am fortunate to work at an institution that is need blind for everyone, regardless of where you come from. And I think that has also been something that has increased volume across the globe. So it continues to be more competitive for everyone, not just for international students applying to Dartmouth College.
I can okay. Go. Suji and I are on the same timing.
I know
You
we
go,
are.
Suji. You first.
Perfect. I will just say quickly that it is typically around 12%. And we don't have any disaggregated data like Todd mentioned on specific country by country admit rates. And that's really because across all of our universities, we don't have a quota on the number of students that we are taking. We don't have a quota on the number of students that we're taking from each high school. When we're reviewing students' applications, if there's several students, many students, dozens of students from each country that we find compelling, if the admissions committees find very compelling, that we want all of them on our campus. And so it truly is a very human process. It's a very personalized process. So don't think that you're just one number across maybe hundreds that might be applying from your country or a few dozen applying from your high school, but really the admissions committee a careful look at your own application and how you as a student would benefit or what value you would add to each of our communities as well. I guess a trend that I would mention is that I feel like especially since I've applied to college, which a long time, there's just so much more information out there about colleges and college admissions. And this kind of goes back to something that Chrissy mentioned before. There's so much information out there, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. And I worry sometimes that there's a lot of misinformation out there too about college admissions, but hopefully you all, by tuning into this Tuesday talk, are believing us and believing what we're saying about the admissions review process, that it is a very human process. Yeah, I'll turn it over to you, Chrissy.
Thanks, Suji. I was just going to share that similar to what Todd mentioned, our bit rate is less than 7%, less than 6%, dwindling down for international students, although we don't disaggregate data either. And it really depends on the year, right? We can't predict how many students from each place around the world or high school in the United States are applying. So that's why there's no quota. There's no magic calculation to it. It's impossible to do that here at hyper selective institutions. I will say we have over 100 countries represented in our undergraduate student body. So again, like Todd, we have a lot of diversity across the entire globe, and even digging into each of the countries now, just trying to find diverse socioeconomic representation as well as geographic representation across some really big nations that do bring different voices and perspectives. One thing I will say, Gloria, in relation to your question, the volume of apps just keeps getting bigger. Whether the number keeps going up, the qualified applicants are superb. We could admit so many students in our application pool. So the quality is just astounding. And so we've had to pivot to figure out what are we going to do to find that what Saul says, which is my favorite thing about admissions holistic talk, is rather than competitive, compelling, right? So how do we turn the knob in our application to find what is compelling about the students that are applying and also what's compelling about the fit for them at our institution. So we're a really big early decision program. A lot of our students and our numbers of early decision applicants have been rising exponentially. So we take that commitment very seriously. We only have ED1 at Northwestern. We again know that a lot of students have to apply at different timelines around the world. So we do reserve about half of our class for the regular decision program or those that we defer. And also in the absence of, or the changes in the landscape of testing, because a lot of students can do very well on the tests. So understanding that in our pools, so many students meet that benchmark pretty fervently, like just quickly, easy. So we've pivoted towards, instead of just early decision, the supplemental essay, we actually changed last year from one big question, like why Northwestern, which was more general, to 5 different supplemental questions. And a lot of our peer institutions are doing this or some format of it. And so you get to pick 2 of those 5. Again, they're pretty short and sweet. They're actually really trying to get at that compelling part of like, what makes us compelling for you and authentically. I need you to say it authentically because there's a lot of things you can find on the website or the chat GPT, right? So that doesn't pair up with the rest of your application, or again, holistic. And then also we've actually designed those 5 questions to target certain ideas about our institution that we value. So we're kind of giving you hints about 5 different why Northwestern topics, rather than just leaving it open to the entire institution. So that's one of the things we've done. It was a really great year for that and to see how those unfolded. I've been in admissions for 18 years and that's the first time we've done that. So some new answers. And then also things like that are rounding out your applications, like your initial views, really getting to know the student, the glimpse as well, to be able to just hear it straight from the student and the pitch. So adding some of those pieces that can make it a little bit more contextual, compelling, rather than just those data statistics that are competitive.
Yeah, and I want to move on to this compelling piece, but it's very interesting to me because I'm seeing questions on all my platforms and they all continue to sit in that academic zone. And I think that it's really difficult for people to kind of understand. And you're coming from cultures that look at one test score to determine kind of your future. So I get why it's difficult. You're like, what's the benchmark? And if y'all can give a little color, like international like apps, like generally speaking, like what percentage of the people are academically qualified? That might help people, because I think everyone's kind of like, if I could just take one more class, or if I could just convince, like, to some of the counselors on the call, like, what do I need to do on my profile to make sure you understand what our GPA actually means? Like, if you can kind of give a sense of like, of your international applicants, what percentage of those people already hit that competitive mark, Solomon, maybe?
You know, thank you for asking that question. I think it's a good question. And, you know, in my, I don't know, almost 10 years of experience reading international applications, I would probably say that 90+% of students who apply to Duke, and I would bet, you know, many of our universities represented here are competitive. So that also means, you know, that they're, you know, students, what I mean by that is like students are taking some of the most rigorous courses available to them within their high school curriculum. They're getting some of the top grades available, if not the top. And if they submit testing, the testing is within the mid-50 ranges of our institution. So, and I would assume that they're probably among this collection of schools, they're in the 1500s. So, you know, all of those pieces combined, you know, 90+% of our students who apply are kind of in that place already. So that's where we have to look at, you know, okay, that's the baseline. What makes a student compelling? And then they're, you know, going into that, you know, in my mind, there are 2 things that really make a student stand out among the competitive pool. The first is this idea of intellectual curiosity. So we want to see students, we have lots of students in our pool that can get the right answer on exams, but we want to deliver to our faculty students who enjoy the process of getting to that right answer, right? And that is intellectual curiosity. So we will look for those pieces of intellectual curiosity in your letters of recommendation, in the essays that you write, in the initial view interviews that you do, in your alumni interviews if they're offered. I mean, there are so many opportunities to provide that data point to us that kind of lifts you from that competitive portion to like, oh, wow, this student is not only really, really bright, but is like constantly thinking in different ways, and that's what we want to deliver to our faculty. And then the second thing is, how have you contributed to your community in positive ways? I think that's another piece that makes a student compelling. So we're looking to bring to our campus, good classmates, good teammates, good roommates, students who have made contributions, through leadership, through service. You don't have to do all of those things. I want to emphasize that too. Like, you do things that you enjoy and do the best that you can within those things. So if you are like the student body president, we have lots of student body presidents in our pools, but we want to find the students who, maybe are able to like identify things that I don't know. I'm already like reluctant to give you examples of like, because I don't want everyone to do the same things.
Yeah.
But like, I think the committee is looking for students who are looking to make their communities better. And community is broadly defined. It could be athletics, it could be service, it could be leadership, it could be your church. It could be anything you do. But in my mind, you boil it down to two things, like intellectual curiosity and then making your community a better and positive ways. Like, those are the two things that really stand out and make a student compelling.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about compellingness. I mean, like, Solomon, you did a great job starting us off. I love the intellectual curiosity, the community impact. We talk about that all the time on all of our Tuesday talks. And those are harder. There's no measurement for that. There's no score. Like, you can't be like, I mean, maybe internally you have some kind of rubric that is like a score, but like, it's difficult for us to tell students like, oh, you need to get 100 on your community impact. So before I dive real quickly, I'm sorry, there's like just like continuing to be these like academic questions. I just want to ask, like, can you, like, people are like, if I have a B, do I have no hope for your school? Real talk.
I'll do the real talk on that one. We have, everyone's looking at me like, what's he gonna say? Yeah, no, I mean, there has never been a moment where like one grade or one class has cost a student admission, right? There's never that. And even on the other side of things, as you're sitting here, I know some of you are asking that question of like, well, what if I take one more AP or I do one more? There's never been a committee discussion where we're like, we're going to admit that kid because they took one more AP. It is really the academics piece is sort of bringing you into the conversation. And then we're like, yeah, that student can handle the work, right? We've established that. That's like almost like a check mark box. Now let's get to the compelling story, the fit for the community, which I know is where we're headed. But yeah, if you have one B, it's okay. Guess what? You're human in this process. It is okay. And it is not going to be the end of the world there. So I'll leave that real talk, and we can dive into the compelling piece if you want.
Thank you. Well, and I wanted somebody to say something where, again, I think we have this trouble because the application comes as a form. So we're like, okay, section. We're kind of thinking very compartmentalized, component. And what we're really trying to get is like, you're trying to tell your whole story. You're trying to actually give this compelling argument that you are going to be an amazing student on this campus, right? And so if you were to have a B, there's going to be something else in your story that's going to be convincing that, oh, this B was because of COVID, or because it was a hard class and they were still transitioning, or like they were a 9th grader and still trying to understand, and now that they're an 11th grader, like if you're able to kind of weave your story to make it compelling, like it's not just the B itself, that is determining your future. So, okay, so extracurriculars. We talked a little bit about community impact, and I think in many Tuesday talks before, we've talked about the point of extracurriculars is not the activity itself, but it is some of the qualities that come out of having done these things. So one of the questions is, can I just do one and really focus on that and still be compelling, or do I need to do lots?
I'm
Suji,
waiting
go
for
ahead.
Saul to go because he has this angled and a targeted answer. But Suji, you go first. I'm just plugging Saul.
No. Saul should, I want to hear Saul's answer now.
I feel like I'm on this. I don't know what you're.
You said there's always well-angled students. You have a great answer for that.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Christy. Yeah. So I think you're yes, what Christy said. So there are two types of students, in our pool, and I think either student is like we are happy to have either student. So there's the well-rounded student, right? And I want to emphasize that you don't have to do every single thing in order to be compelling in our process, but we do have students that do a number of different things to have their hand in a number of different buckets. So maybe you're in class leadership, maybe you play a sport, maybe you play the piano, and those things are wonderful. And we have, I think, at all of our institutions here represented, all of us have, well-rounded students who contribute in many different ways. But then we also have students who are what I call, and what Christy was alluding to, well lopsided or angular, right? So students who, love, they're just like the biggest math nerd and they totally claim it. They're like, I love math. And they've exhausted the math curriculum that's offered at their school by, the second year in high school. And so, and they are math club president, and they tutor math, and they enter math competitions, and they everything that they do in their life is math related, and they do that really, really well. That student, I hope that student would apply to Duke or any of our institutions, because that is also very compelling in many ways, both ways, like intellectual curiosity, one, but also, it shows positive contributions to your math nerdiness community. And so I think that's what Christy was hoping that I would say. And both kinds of students, oh, please apply, because you're welcome. And you could be compelling in our process.
I just like how Saul answers that. Sorry for putting you on the spot, Saul. You can tell we are a community of educators, and we get along pretty well if I'm poking him to answer that. But we need all kinds of students. We can't just take one cookie cutter type, right? There's over 2,000 students that are going to march through that arch right behind me to our freshman class each year, our first year class. And so there's no algorithm that you can create. I will say that the algorithm, and this goes back to my first answer, so hopefully I'm not just like a mom repeating this the whole time, but real talk is each of those extracurricular activities should be like helping you like guide yourself as to figure out what's important to you as a human, as a student, as a community member, as a contributor. And so, look at the extracurricular activities chart as a journey. That's how we kind of look at it. It's not just like this calculation of how many points you can accumulate based on whatever. Like, people will tell you that it's not true. It's really about getting to know yourself through 4 years or 10 years of experiences that are helping you learn what is your next step. And some of that can be like something new you discover in your senior year and makes you really excited for a certain type of institution, right? But like, we're still figuring it out, right? What do we want to be when we grow up? Think of it that way, like the things that you're doing to help understand what you want to do with your academic career, with your college career, with your rest of your life, and who you are as a student influencing others.
So there has been a trend, and I'm sure you all have seen, of people doing a lot of research. And lots of research projects, lots of research papers, lots of research, a lot of different kinds. So what do you all think of that? Does that help with the intellectual curiosity piece? Does it how, is it impactful? What's your kind of view on that?
I would throw that a little bit back on the student to ask that question of, why are you doing this research? Is it because of something that you're passionate and interested in? And if so, great. That's a great opportunity for you to explore that, to have that experience. And as Saul has mentioned, it can demonstrate that intellectual curiosity. And I think we can tell if you're pursuing it to have that experience versus pursuing it just to have it as a list on your activity. And so I think I would ask that question of, is this really where you want to spend your time? Is this an area that you want to grow in and explore, or are you just doing it to have it on the resume? And if you're doing it just to have it on the resume, really kind of go back to what Christy is hinting at, this sort of journey is what experiences do you really want to have? What are your passions are in your interest? This is a chance for you to go out and explore those through the activities that you're doing outside the classroom. And typically, if you're pursuing things you're passionate and interested in, that will translate very well to your application. We'll be able to see you're putting in more time and energy. You're probably going to have a bigger impact because you actually care about what you're doing and you're not just doing it to have it on that application. So again, figure out why you're doing that research and why you're interested in it.
Yes, and I would say jumping on saying, I think it really boils down to authenticity. How authentic are you in this activity? How much are you truly passionate about it? Yes, research is one way of exhibiting intellectual curiosity, but it's not the only way. There are plenty of other activities that you can participate in to show that intellectual curiosity. But why research? Why did you decide that as opposed to something else? And what did you gain from that is really much more important to the admissions committee, and through that research, what you gained from that as opposed to what the actual research was.
So then I have a question. How do you clarify that, verify that? Like, how are you as admissions officers able to kind of like assess, oh, there's authentic interest in here, given that you're probably only seeing an abstract of the research, or you're only maybe seeing that like it's a 150 characters maybe from the extracurricular. Like, how do you gauge that? And how can a student, because like we're saying things like, oh, like discovering yourself but like the application is sort of limited. Like we have one Common App essay that only has so many words. Supplements, yes, like there are more of them now, but even those really short, like how do you clarify that authenticity, like on your side?
Yeah, I would say that there's no sort of way that I can completely go into a file and say this is authenticity and this is an example of inauthenticity. I would say it's one of those things where like if you do it long enough, you just know it when you see it. And that might not be completely helpful for the applicant, but the question is not how do I show that I'm authentic? If you're authentic, then you'll be authentic. I think you'll just sort of fall into that. I would say that, it's never sort of prohibitive when a student does this, but sometimes I see examples in a file in an application where a student will list all of the activities that they do. It could be research, it could be something else, but then there's no other allusion to that whatsoever, right? And so if I get the sense, to use Saul's example, that a student is interested in math, but none of the questions that we ask that are related to intellectual curiosity or your personal essay or any other opportunity that you have to show this interest comes through, then that might be a little bit of a, has the student really, not that they're inauthentic, but have they really fleshed out the interests that they portray in their extracurricular activities, and do those come through to the surface? We will also see which teachers you choose to write letters on your behalf. Your guidance counselor will probably allude to your interest or your impact in the community. So it all sort of like weaves together, and we can pick that through and understand like what are you genuinely interested in about. And I would say that, the reason why we ask students to talk about what they do outside of the classroom is not because we want to understand how busy you are. It's not like, does this student never have a waking moment in their day when they are doing something? It is more about understanding you as a whole person and the potential community member that you could be on our campus. So if you're really interested in violin, I don't want you to drop the violin as soon as you get to Dartmouth. I want you to continue doing that in some capacity. And so that is the sort of generally the way that I think about a student showing authenticity when they apply.
I will also just put in, this is another real talk moment here. sometimes you have to be creative in terms of getting that message out to the admissions committee. And sometimes I get asked, well, can I give you my 100-page, research paper? Can I add that somewhere? And the real talk is like, for all of us that, we receive over 50,000 applications, there's just not going to be enough time. And also, you don't know if the admissions person who's going to read your application is actually going to know, like, have the scientific knowledge, for instance, to know what you're talking about in your abstract. And so these abstracts are not being, or these research papers are not being passed along to faculty members. And so you'll want to think of like other ways. So Gloria talked about, the additional information section. You can put a little bit of a synopsis there. But the other way that you can think about, relaying your interest in research is asking your PI or the person who's overseeing your research to write an additional letter of recommendation for you. And that could also provide, additional opportunities of evidence of intellectual curiosity in that way. And they can also contextualize, your research in relation to other people's research that they've overseen, or, within their careers or whatever. And that can be very helpful as well.
We've talked a lot about kind of these interests and whether or not they are seen in multiple parts of your application. There is a question like, do I need to write about my intended major or my academic interests in my essays then?
Not necessarily. I mean, we're looking for pieces to come together, right? And to find little sparks that glimmer in different places of your app. I was going to say that, one of the most authentic places I find when a student's talking about their research paper is in the initial view when they actually have to talk about it. Because, and again, that just depends on the student and how they talk about it. There's no perfect way to express themselves, but you can kind of feel that integrity in the student's expression, whether that is an initial view or in writing. But again, it's impossible to cram everything you think you're supposed to talk about into the essays. So it just kind of, how does it come up and percolate throughout the application with the recommendations, with the extracurricular activities chart, with the initial view, with other opportunities to share about yourself, and to see those things come together as a whole. And, again, another real talk, there's no perfect way for us to determine authenticity. So there's probably plenty of students that are not authentic that do get admitted. We do our best. And again, Todd said, we have a lot of experience doing this. And we get together with other people who have a lot of experience in committee rooms to discuss each applicant. So by the time that we admit a student, there's a lot of perspectives that are gleaned from what that student has written. It's not just one person. It's not just like how well you sell yourself to one person, right? And it's not just an algorithm. So Shane, you were going to say something, sorry.
No, I was just going to say the vast majority of our applicants don't even know what they want to study. And that is perfectly fine. That is actually one of the beauties of the US system, is it can allow you to show up on our doorstep and you have absolutely no idea what you want to do. And even those of you out that are like, I have it all figured out, there's a good chance that many of you will change your mind after that first semester or first year. And that's also okay, because you're going to wind up being exposed to so many new things that you didn't even know about. So just know you don't have to have it all figured out at the time of application. That's why you're coming to our university, so you have that time to explore. So that's why I say it's not necessarily required to talk about an area of interest in the application, because you might not know, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll just hop on as someone who has done thousands of interviews and watched thousands of interviews. A lot of the students that interview, they don't know what they want to do. But I think one of the wonderful things that comes out of the interview is that even though they don't know what they want to do, the ideas that they have in like how they're trying to discover that route are actually showing all those things that Solomon mentioned and Christy mentioned, like everything of like, there is curiosity there. There is an ability to have a conversation about something high level, something challenging, how they kind of grew out of that situation. Like, even though they don't have the end goal done, that journey there that happens in that conversation is important, which is why we at Initial View are like, look, it's not a requirement for you to do an interview for college applications, but it's one more opportunity for you to make sure that that thread is being shared in your application where maybe you didn't have a space, one of those components kind of didn't fit what you wanted to say in that kind of thread. So, and I think the trend here, with regards to, I mean, y'all can mention, you can talk about how it works at your school, but I think video has become such an easy part of review. So, and an easy part for students, like you all record videos all the time. You're getting on Zoom right now. You're very familiar with being on a Zoom call or a platform that enables you to have a conversation with someone or to even just record some words yourself. And my son just went through the application process. He'll be going to Georgia Tech in the fall. Watching him kind of go through that process was huge. Like he, in having a conversation, actually was able to like create a better understanding of himself. So it's not even just for the result, the outcome of the admission, but it is like in that journey of like asking yourself questions and being asked questions when you can kind of say like, yeah, you know what? I don't like economics. Like I thought I liked economics the whole time. And now people are asking me questions and I don't want to talk about it. And I'm not able to kind of go deep about it. Maybe I should pivot. So think about it, you know, as a student, as a counselor, as a parent, when you're thinking about, I know it's hard because you hear these success stories and you're like, oh my goodness, I must have to be like this. But really, as parents and educators, and even you as student, you want to have a successful, wonderful experience. And US University isn't just about doing research. I mean, yes, it can be a big component of your university experience, but for most of your campuses, you've got 17 and 18-year-olds coming on move-in day, super excited about just being engaging and fun and joining lots of organizations, right? Like it's not just about research. So anything to add to that? I know we only have a few more minutes, so. Okay, so since we only have 4 minutes, there is a question about demonstrated interest. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but like, is there something, advice on what demonstrated interest means?
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, colleagues, I believe institutions do not practice demonstrated interest. And so this means that the number of emails that you send to our office, the number of times that you call, for example, that is not being tracked in our system whatsoever. There are other universities who may track demonstrated interest just to gauge of interest with that particular university is, but for all 5 of our institutions, I believe we do not track demonstrated interest in our application process. So we hope that if you are reaching out to our offices, that it is in a more just curious way of you have that you cannot find on the website, for example, and that you want to reach out to the admissions office about.
I agree with Suji. I think demonstrated interest is like a little bit of an antiquated process in college admissions, and it could actually kind of do the reverse. We just want you to do your research and getting to know us. And there's a lot of ways that comes out, but that's not measurable in the application process necessarily by any one data point.
I will just say, you know, there is one way, I think, among many of our schools that you can demonstrate your interest, and that is applying early decision. I mean, you know, that's a huge commitment. I think that's like, you know, I often say, I don't know what I'm going to do next week, let alone the next 4 years of my life. And so for a student to make that commitment to say, I'm going to apply, I've done my research, there's a list of schools that I love, but I love your school the most. To make that commitment, to reiterate what Christy said, we take that really, really seriously.
Great. And I always say, you know, when you're thinking about demonstrated interest, what you're really trying to do is college admissions is a little bit like dating. You're basically trying to understand each other. And so you're demonstrating of interest, meaning you're going to the website and your like thoughtfulness and how you answer the supplement, and like those are not check marks, but they are going to help improve the match. So think about it that way for the people who are asking about that. Okay, last minute here. Big advice, just one word of advice that you want to leave to our audience. And while you're doing that, I'm going to share the screen so that people can know how to email your institutions if they have specific questions.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in and say that my advice is to not make the entirety of your last year of secondary school about applying to college. We want you to enjoy high school. We understand that you are 17, 18 years old, and that you have a life outside of just applying to school. So spend some time, like an hour or so a week, talking to your family, your guidance counselor, whoever might be involved about this process, but it does not need to be a conversation throughout the day about applying to Dartmouth or any other school. So enjoy it to the extent that you can enjoy this process, because it's not intended to be all that you do.
I just say, don't let an admission decision define you, especially a single one. I know that sounds a little cliche, but it's truly not. There are so many students that I read their applications and I wanted and I fighted and I advocated to admit, but we have limited spots. This hyperselectivity is real on our side of the desk too. So there's still students I think about in the process, and I still wonder where they are off in the world being successful. So that decision does not define you. It's just a part of your path and your next step.
Say that a theme that you've probably heard all of us talk about is just be yourself throughout the process. Be yourself in your essays, in the activities that you participated in, your initial view interviews as well. And hopefully through that, you find the process a little bit more enjoyable as it can be.
I'll just say have fun with the application. It is your chance to tell your story, right? You own that application, and you get to figure out what you want to let us know. Don't worry about what you think we want to see, because you're going to lose a lot of sleep trying to figure that out. We barely know what we want sometimes, right? But really put yourself out there, tell your story, put your best foot forward, and see how it plays out in the process.
And I'll just say, just take care of yourself. Get enough sleep, eat, and also spend time with your people. I think the last year or two, you're not going to get these years back. And so like I'll echo everything that my colleague said. Just enjoy yourself. Enjoy the rest of your high school career, secondary school career.
And I will add my last piece is have lots of conversations. I think I know you probably don't want to have them with your mom. My son didn't love having them with me that last summer before application, but have them with someone that you trust. And I think the more conversations you have, the more you're going to discover yourself in this process. And that is the beauty, I think, of the holistic admissions process. It's not just one section. You get to know who you are and how you want to grow. And this is just the beginning. There's like so much more of your life to be lived. So enjoy your summer, everyone. Thank you so much to my guests for taking time. I know some of you had to wake up super early for this, and so I'm really grateful for you spending time with us. Enjoy your summer. For my admissions officer friends, I'll see most of you in at a conference soon. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.